Talladega Superspeedway. Can Ford finally find victory lane? Who's a good sleeper pick? A lot of names come to mind. I'm now joined by the one and only Dale Tanhardt. Great to have you on the show just in time for Talladega Superspeedway. We're back at a pack racing drafting type track. It's been a few weeks, Dale. Last time you were on the show, actually it was a couple times ago, but we had you on before Daytona, and I remember we talked a lot about narratives. You know, what was the vibe like going into the first Superspeedway race of the year? I don't think the script called for Byron and Bowman sparking a big crash and then finishing 1-2, but going into this weekend at Talladega, is there a storyline or just a feeling you've got?
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes you dig too much and you psych yourself out of the bets that you should actually have. And it really is crazy how NASCAR, just betting aside, how NASCAR is so mysteriously ironic, right? We've seen it at Martinsville with Hendrick Motorsports 1-2-3, the first ever 1-2-3 in Martinsville history.
Yeah.
And then we see it with what happened with Chase Elliott at Texas, winning for the first time for Hooters in 32 years. And the irony around that was crazy as well, dating back to Alan Kulwicki's last win in 1992 at Pocono. And then, 2024, the Daytona 500. The narrative for me was that William Byron was 20-1 on race day. That was too long, and we did take that. But, it's so tough to tell. Like Kyle Busch won Talladega spring of 2023 last year in the number 8 car. So I feel like that kind of resonated with some people with the dominance you see behind me in the DEI era with Dale Earnhardt Jr. about 20 years before that. So, man, it's tough. I can't say I have a narrative in mind, but I'm sure at the end of Sunday afternoon, there will be some kind of perfect lineage to something special that happened either 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or et cetera. So it'll be fun to see, as NASCAR is very, very superstitious.
Yeah, it's very funny how things often time out seemingly perfectly, like you said. Well, let's talk about maybe some of the heavy hitters this weekend. All eyes, I think, are on Ford. They're still looking for their first Cup Series win of the season. Historically, they've been great at Talladega. They've been great at the drafting tracks. What do you like about Ford? Are there any Ford drivers or teams in particular that you have your eye on?
Yeah, I'm actually extremely high on Ford this weekend. I think Ford will win the pole, and I think they will win the race as well. And there's massive betting implications there when it comes to just the entire Ford fleet. And Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski, to me, are auto bets at every single super speedway. What you see them do in the draft is spectacular. I look back at the Daytona 500 when everybody talked about and complained about there was no passing and the fuel save issues. I looked up and Brad Keselowski was outside the top 20 with, I don't know, a handful of laps to go. And I was watching the race with my dad, and I was like, you watch, Brad K will be up there in no time. And within a couple laps, he was in the top 3 competing for the win. The best drivers at the super speedways will find their way to the front. And yes, Brad Keselowski, I talk about this all the time, how we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for that win, that first win at RK Racing outside of a dual race in February of 2022. This is the 3-year anniversary of his last win, which was at Talladega Superspeedway. So there's a narrative right there.
There we go. We found it.
Exactly. Maybe we did. It was that simple, Eric. At 12-1 via Bet Rivers, that's the best place to grab favorites like a Blaney, like a Keselowski, because that's the book that has your favorites at 12-1, while other books kind of open the door at 10-1. So I would bet Keselowski at 10-1. I'd bet him at 11-1 because he's an auto bet. He just runs so well here. He's got 6 Talladega wins. He's knocked on the door at all sorts of super speedway races. At this point, we know he's cursed in the Daytona 500. I actually just think it won't happen in that race. But when it comes to races outside the Daytona 500, Brad Keselowski has been one of the greatest super speedway racers in the history of NASCAR, and particularly at Talladega Superspeedway. So I'm looking at him and Blaney, and I'm back on the Joey Logano train as well. And some people will sit here and say, wow, you're going to bet all the favorites? Well, guess what? You have that opportunity because the odds are so advantageous with it being a super speedway. You get the favorites at 10-1 or better on the majority of sports books. So if you're all in on Ford, take Blaney, take Logano, take Keselowski. This is a huge weekend for them. I know Ford is sitting here saying this is the race where we can become the equalizer because we've got arguably the best drafting race car drivers on planet Earth with a Brad K, a Joey Logano, a Ryan Blaney that have dominated super speedway racing outside of Denny Hamlin over the past decade and a half. So I'm looking at those guys, and I don't hate Stewart-Haas Racing as well. I think this is a big weekend for Stewart-Haas. I think we're kind of sleeping on a couple guys there with Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, guys that I feel like are trending in the right direction when it comes to their super speedway results or ability to get to the front. So I'm high on Ford all weekend long, Eric.
Well, hey, Stewart Haas has strength in numbers, I guess, compared to some of their Ford counterparts. I
It
like the
may not
Blake.
next year.
Yeah, take advantage of it while you still got it. Ryan Blaney, I like that pick a lot as well. He finished first and second in the two Talladega races last year. May have gone 2 for 2 in victories, but Bubba threw that late block in the spring race. I want to talk about some dark horses, not just Ford Mustang dark horses, but actual dark horses here. Because speaking of Ford, Austin Cindric and Michael McDowell were the 2 stage winners at Atlanta, which I know is a little different from Talladega, but it's still a drafting track. So I put together my top 5 sort of super speedway sleeper picks, and I want to see if these kind of align with some of your top 5. So I have Austin Cindric at my number 1 spot. I've got Todd Gilliland, who led a ton of laps at Daytona and Atlanta to start this year, at number 2. Corey LaJoie, often a threat. Michael McDowell, I just mentioned, won a stage. And then I want to throw BJ McLeod in there. Remember how fast he was in his dual race at Daytona? That team's part-time now. They're pouring more resources into the few select races they actually run. He was fast. He sliced and diced with the leaders in his dual race. Do you have a slightly different top 5 of super speedway sleepers?
Yeah, I love this segment. Look, I'm a fantasy football guy. I love the term sleeper, and we can use it and apply it to the NASCAR world as well. And you said it with BJ McLeod. While my list is somewhat different, I got to just say BJ McLeod is going to be one of the most popular bets this weekend.
Just for a top
'Cause
10. I'm not trying to bet the
exactly.
world here, but a top 10.
He's trending 9-1 or 10-1 for a top 10. I think a lot of people will take that. And just to throw in a nugget, DraftKings Sportsbook is allowing people to parlay top 10s, which is what that's the concept that created a millionaire with FanDuel back at Daytona 2022 when everybody crashed in the rain and you had all the Rick Ware guys, Beard with the 62, BJ McLeod all run up in the top 10, and it created
That's
some
right.
crazy payouts. I can't believe DraftKings is doing that. This is not an endorsement of DraftKings. It's just something that's crazy that I can't believe they're getting back into. So I must say that because BJ McLeod is going to be a popular pick, straight up and mixed in with that parlay stuff as well. But when I look at my top 5 guys, our lists are similar. I mentioned SHR. My number 5 would be Noah Gragson. I like Noah Gregson's aggressiveness. You got to remember, spring 2023, this was a race where he was up in the top 2, leading on or outside row on a restart, and he got into it with Ross Chastain. And that wasn't the only time they got into it. But I like the aggression level. I like what Noah Gragson's done in the Xfinity Series with a couple wins at Daytona and Talladega. And I think with this race car, a car that Eric Almirola was really strong in at the super speedways dating back to 2018, Noah Gragson could be a good sleeper that people aren't going to be thinking about. Moving on to number 4 on mine, I'm going to go with Corey LaJoie. I think Corey LaJoie has been a guy that's proven he can run top 5, he can run top 10, he can compete for wins.
Yeah, he was 4th at Daytona, 13th at Atlanta to start this year. So that's pretty good numbers.
And he had a top 10 at Talladega last fall as well.
Yeah.
So he's on a really good streak right now when it comes to super speedway, just getting to the end and getting good finishes. And I think the pressure's on for Corey right now because Carson Hocevar, her teammate, very, very raw as a rookie, is performing pretty well. So watch out for Corey LaJoie. This could be a good equalizer race for him as well. At number 3, I'm going to go with Eric Jones. This is the guy everybody forgets about, man. I know Eric Jones. You look at the overall results, they may not be there on the stat sheet, but Eric Jones is a guy that has found himself in many winning or borderline winning situations at super speedways, and in particular at Talladega. Think back, I think it was spring of 2020 when Blaney won. Eric Jones was flying up the outside, got doored last second,
That's right.
didn't win. Fall 2022 when he pushed Chase Elliott to the win, he was up in the top 5. Spring of 2022, gave up the win in the tri-oval. He was a 60-1 bet. Eric Jones is a guy that is a veteran, and he finds himself in close race situations when it comes down to these super speedway races. Number 2, I'm going with Chase Briscoe, talking about the
Okay.
SHR. Chase Briscoe, to me, is trending high, and I think a lot of people are going to sleep on him. When you look at all drivers with a minimum of 10 starts at super speedways, Chase Briscoe is 7th on just pure average finish. 7th in all drivers with at least 10 starts at super speedways, and the 6 guys ahead of him have all won at least one super speedway race.
Wow.
Chase Briscoe, not flashy, but he's getting the finishes at Daytona and Talladega. We're not going to talk about Atlanta when he crashed, but Daytona, Talladega doing pretty well. And my number one is right there with you with Austin Cindric. If the
Okay.
books are 33-1 out there, 30-1 for Austin Cindric, who we thought with his very diverse driving talents in the Xfinity Series would be better at other tracks. It's now where Austin Cindric's shine is at the super speedways. He leads laps, he wins stages, he's always up there, and you know that number two Penske Ford is fast on the super speedway. So
Yeah.
there you have it, my sleepers, and we're kind of aligned. I feel like great think alike on some of this
We
stuff.
right? Definitely have a lot of we got some interesting picks up, and I'm surprised no Michael McDowell on your list, considering he started on the front row both Daytona and Atlanta to start the year. So qualifying will be especially interesting. But we do certainly align on Cindric, if for no other reason than he has some bad, fast teammates he can lean on in the draft, in practice, and qualifying. But that's some pretty good stuff right there. We've talked a lot about some unique names that we don't touch on most weeks, but I think we should wrap this up, Dale, by talking about the two dominant teams of the season. All eyes have been on Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing. They've combined to win 8 of the first 9 Cup races this year. And Hendrick, of course, finished 1-2 in the Daytona 500. Toyota swept the Daytona duels, though they are still looking for their first super speedway win in the next-gen era. I guess if you had to pick amongst those drivers, the Denny Hamlins, the Chase Elliott's, the Byrons, the Martin Truexes, is there a driver from those teams or drivers that jump out at you as maybe worthwhile picks this weekend?
Yeah, when William Byron doesn't have a DNF, he's always at the front of these, man. Like, and it was proven in the Daytona 500. He's been in the front at Talladega. He won the first Atlanta race in the new configuration. So, I mean, William Byron is a guy that clearly is becoming a master of the draft. So, when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing, he sticks out to me. I'm not prepared to bet on him just yet because I feel like in modern day NASCAR Cup Series, it's hard to repeat on this style of racing. And especially when it comes to Talladega, I think we've had a different winner every single time in the Gen 7 era. So we want to talk about Joe Gibbs Racing. Christopher Bell winning that dual race earlier this year and being really close to winning the dual race last year and having some other moments at Atlanta where he ran up close into the top 3, top 5 is kind of an indication. So Christopher Bell's a guy you'll find around 20-1 on most sports books. I think that's the dude that's going to be maybe one of those sleepers when we hit Sunday afternoon at Talladega.
Yeah, it's shocking to me. We went through this whole 10-plus minute segment, and I don't think we mentioned Denny Hamlin's name once. He doesn't seem to take to the way this next-gen car drafts. He's been vocally sort of critical of how it races in the draft, and Toyota's still winless at these styles of races. It's going to be interesting. Toyota's been strong.
Stat?
Yeah, go for it.
One crazy stat that I've realized over the past couple of years. When drivers not hit the age of 40, but when they go over the age of 40, they just don't win super speedway races anymore. Now, Dale Jarrett, back in 2005 in the fall race, a race that I'm sure a lot of us traditionalists remember, was the last driver over the age of 40 to win at Talladega Superspeedway. Now, you've had a few guys that have won at the age of 40, like a Matt Kenseth, like a Dale Earnhardt Jr., but think about this. Denny Hamlin last won a super speedway race in 2020, which I believe was the fall Talladega race where he had the 3-wide deal with DiBenedetto and William Byron. Ever since Denny Hamlin has gone over the age of 40, what has he done on the super speedways? He has not gone back to victory lane. So I really stick true to that stat until somebody beats me.
Until proven otherwise. That's an interesting stat. Although I do know last year Kevin Harvick was 46, 47 years old, was this close to getting it done before the disqualification. We won't talk about that. But Dale, this was awesome. Always love to talk to you, especially ahead of these super speedways. So many different names we get to mention, get to give some love to. Really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Hope you guys will catch me on the boulevard this weekend. We'll be at Talladega. So it's going to be a fun one.
Huge thank you again to Dale for being on the show. Check out Dale Center on his YouTube channel. Link is down in the description below. Follow Dale on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Huge thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. I will see you all in the next episode.